Hey everybody, welcome to the video. So I'm breaking down the Monday Night Football showdown slate between the Buffalo Bills and the New England Patriots, which should be a pretty fun AFC showdown. This should be a good real-life game. DFS-wise, I'm not sure it's going to be the greatest. Both these defenses are pretty solid, plus the weather tonight not looking too friendly for the offenses. Pretty windy, which is the most important thing when it comes to impacting performance. Usually precipitation isn't too big of a deal, but it's going to be cold, chance of snow showers, and it just looks pretty overall ugly, but I'm looking forward to this game. We still have some fun fantasy options. Stephon Diggs, Josh Allen, the Patriots. They've been playing some great football recently. Might not be the most fun fantasy-wise, but should be a good game nonetheless, and I'm looking forward to it. And if you do find this video helpful in any way possible, make sure you would like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet already. If you want to take that one step further, become a fish member over on Patreon. Link is down below in the description for that. Optimizer, ownership projections, cheat sheets, all that fun stuff can be found down below. It's what I use each and every single weekend, and it's been pretty successful so far. And I'll cover just the NFL, I do the NBA, and then NASCAR and MLB once the seasons start back up again. So if you want to check it out, you know where to find it. And last but not least, this video is sponsored by PrizePicks. I'm sure most of you know this by now, but if you don't, it's daily fantasy sports simplified, just you versus the projections. There's no sharks, 150 max contests, or salary cap restrictions, or anything like that. Just you versus the props they offer each and every single day. And as of right now, if you do sign over on PrizePicks, you can get a free money bonus. That's an instant deposit match up to $100 when you use code CPEN and tell them I sent you. To go to prizepicks.com, use the link down below. I do highly recommend it. Very fun and playing over there in addition to what I do on DraftKings each and every single weekend. But I think it'll be it for the plugs for the most part. So without further ado, let's dive into today's video. And as always, we'll start with the quarterback position. We're going to play both these guys quite heavily. I don't think there's a reason not to. I will say Josh Allen is definitely more of a candidate in the captain spot than Mac Jones for me. I think Mac Jones is a fine flex play on this slate, but Josh Allen, since he's a rushing quarterback, I always say that I'm not a huge fan of quarterbacks in the captain slot unless they offer me rushing ability. Guys like Jalen Hurts, I guess Cam Newton, even though he's just complete garbage, Lamar Jackson. You guys get the idea. Josh Allen is a guy that's averaging close to 40 rushing yards per game, which is kind of like a built-in passing touchdown floor once you factor in the points that he'd generate from getting 40 rushing yards. Now, I will say the matchup for both these guys are pretty brutal here. The Patriots are allowing the second fewest points per game, and the Bills are allowing the fewest points per game. And Patriots are second DVA versus the pass, and the Bills are first. So really, this is about the worst matchups you could get for both these quarterbacks. Plus, the weather is not looking too hot. Apparently, it's going to be pretty windy, around 20 miles per hour sustained winds, which will hurt the deep ball. It's not that you can't throw, but it definitely hurts their upside a little bit, especially on deep passes. But I think both guys are going to be just fine. I did knock their projections out a little bit just because of that, because you got to factor it in somehow. And plus, the matchups are pretty brutal. I mean, both these guys, since the showdown slate and they're the quarterbacks, obviously the best plays in the entire slate, although you are paying for that. But Josh Allen is a guy that I'm going to play in the captain spot quite heavily. Mac Jones, more of a flex play for me, but I do like Josh Allen quite a bit. Will probably more than likely be my highest owned captain, although I will be pretty high on his pass catching options as well, because you got to have the correlation. But it always expensive at $11,200, and the matchup sucks, but the matchup sucks for everybody on the slate. So it's not like we really can go in a different direction anyway. And when it comes to the captain spot, I typically limit my quarterbacks to around 10 to 15%. But depends on the slate. There's sometimes where I go a little bit higher than that. It'll be an exception for me just because of the rushing upside. With Josh Allen, I could probably see myself going 20% or above just because he's clearly the best play on the slate. Stephon Diggs is up there, but it definitely is a tough matchup, and Josh Allen's my highest projected player by several points. And when that's the case, the optimizer is just going to jam in the captain spot as much as possible. So moving over to our lineup, like I said, we're probably playing both quarterbacks on the slate, but Mac Jones is more of a flex play for me, so we're going to plug him in at $10,000 even. Then we're going to plug in Josh Allen in the captain spot. I'm not saying Josh Allen's the only viable captain on the slate. I'm just saying he's my favorite as of right now. So we're going to plug him in. Pretty expensive at $17,000, but I think we can still make a good lineup work on this slate, even with Allen in the captain spot there. And moving on to the running back position, this might be one of the worst RB slates we've had on a showdown slate. Not because these guys are terrible. Damien, Harris, Stevenson, and a couple others guys are good, solid running backs in the NFL. But for DFS purposes, this is a complete mess and a big timeshare between all of these running backs. We'll start with the Bills first. We have Matt Breida at $6,600, Devin Singletary at $4,600. We have Zach Moss at $600. Looking at snap counts just last week, Breida saw close to 70% of the snaps, Devin Singletary on 40% of the snaps, and Zach Moss was a healthy and active. It's just his decline, I guess, over the course of the season has been quite odd, to say the least. But I don't really like any of these guys. The matchup versus New England, like I said, it's not very good. Now, they are softest versus the run compared to anything else. I mean, they're brutal versus the pass. But versus the run, 10th DVOA, and mid-pack versus running back, 16th, allowing 23.5 DraftKings points per game. So I mean, it's like the one soft spot, but even then, the Bills don't really run the ball enough to make them like super viable. Like Breeda's fine, 6,600 bucks. If he catches a couple of passes, gets into the end zone, and has like 40, 50 yards, yeah, that'll be fine. But Devin Singletary's there too, who can easily steal touches. I mean, it's going to be a bit of a timeshare here. We're not even sure if Zach Moss is going to play or not, so a bit of a question mark for the Bills running backs. They're fine tournament plays, but if you're playing cash games, I don't really see a need to want to jam these guys in. Moving on to the Patriots, we have Damien Harris at 9,800 bucks. Stevenson at $5,600. You have Brandon Bolden at $3,200 as your main three backs here that are going to see the majority of the snaps. And looking at the snap counts last week, all three of these guys played between 30 and 40% of the snaps. Like, that is a complete mess. Damien Harris and Stevenson are the main rushing backs. Brandon Bolden will be used in the passing game on the season. It's not anything like spectacular, but he is averaging around 3 targets per game with an 8.6% target share. Stevenson does get some targets, and Damien Harris less than a target and a half per game. It's a complete mess here. I'm only playing these guys if I'm building multiple lines. If I'm playing cash games or a single entry, you can take a shot at it, but I'm more than likely just passing on that and trying to find other positions that are a little bit more concentrated in the running back position for the Patriots. Because, yeah, I mean, one of these guys might pop off, but actually knowing who's going to pop off is very hard to do so. And you're basically just spinning a wheel and hoping you're getting lucky. And the Bills have been pretty tough on running backs so far this season. Now, they have gotten beaten pretty bad by two good running backs this year, Jonathan Taylor and Derrick Henry, but for the most part, they have been pretty stout. And then moving on to the wide receivers, we're going to start with the Bills here first. And if using Josh Allen, you want some of his pass catching options paired up with him. And we have Stephon Diggs at $10,600, one of the best wide receivers in football. Cole Beasley at $7,800, Emmanuel Sanders at $6,400, then Gabriel Davis at $1,200. There's a couple other guys that see a few snaps, but nothing too significant here. And if we're looking at snap distributions since last week, Stephon Diggs, Cole Beasley, and Emmanuel Sanders all played above 70% of the snaps, and Gabriel Davis got close to 50%, just over 40% at 42% of the snaps last weekend. And looking at target distributions on the season, 9 targets per game for Stephon Diggs with a 25% target share, Beasley with a 19.8% target share, nearly 7 targets per game, although he can be very hot or cold. There are some games where he gets 10 plus targets, and then there's some games where he gets like 2, so he can be very, very up or down, even though he would seem like a safe option as the possession wide receiver, but really hasn't been the case so far this season. Emmanuel Sanders, nearly 5.5 targets per game, but just over a 15% target share, and he can be a little bit more hit or miss as well, but I do think he's a fine tournament option, especially at that price point. And Gabriel Davis, just over 2 targets per game with a 6.7% target share. Obviously, Diggs would be the guy you want in, and I wouldn't say he's overly expensive. I think he's priced just right. And I know everyone loves the narrative of Bill Belichick shutting down the number one option, but I think Stephon Diggs will be just fine here. I mean, if you want to fade him, I get it just because there's other options on this slate, and he's very expensive, and it's not like it's been easy to pass on the Patriots so far this season versus the pass. They're second DVA and fourth versus wide receivers, so it's not like this is a cakewalk matchup. They're just good versus the pass this season, but just from a volume standpoint and a talent standpoint on a showdown slate, hard not to like Stephon Diggs. Then if you want another pass catching option, I would just say whoever fits. If you have the money for Beasley, go for it. If you have the money for Sanders, I think it's fine. If you need a punt option, Gabriel Davis should see at least a target or two, and he's going to be on the field a decent portion. You never know, he could hit on a big play. As far as the Patriots go, these guys are a lot cheaper. We have Kendrick Bourne at a very expensive price point of $8,600, but he just keeps getting touchdowns. You have Jacoby Myers at $7,200 as the wide receiver one in this offense. Do like that price point quite a bit. Just seems a little bit too low, in my opinion. Nelson Aguilar, another guy that seems a little bit too low at $3,000. And then N'Keal Harry's the other guy that sees significant snaps. And looking at snaps last week, we saw both Nelson Aguilar and Jacoby Myers playing over 80% of the snaps. Kendrick Bourne over 50%, and then we saw N'Keal Harry just close to 30%. So really for me, it just depends on who can you fit in, because I don't really have a preference over these guys. It's not like one is insanely better than the other. I would say Jacoby Myers is the obvious option you want, but 7.25 targets per game, Kendrick Bourne at 4 targets per game, Nelson Aguilar at 4 targets. I think Aguilar is probably the best point per dollar play at $3,000. I mean, it's not like he's getting like lucky for a target or two, and he's playing the majority of the snaps. I like that price point quite a bit. I mention the fact that the Bills are first year versus the pass, number one versus wide receivers this year, but Tre'Davious White is out for the season now. He tore up his knee, and he's going to be gone, so it's definitely a big hit to their pass defense. So that could open up some room for the wide receivers and the Patriots and just the passing attack in general. And Nelson Aguilar, probably the guy I had the most interest in just because of that really cheap price point. So then moving on to our lineup, we're going to plug in 2 guys here. We're going to try to get wide receivers for both quarterbacks just to get the correlation. And it's going to be a little bit expensive here. We might have to go dumpster diving if we do this. But I do want Stephon Diggs in here with Josh Allen. And for Mac Jones, we could either get Jacoby Myers, or I think we go down low with Nelson Aguilar. If we tried to get Jacoby Myers in, that would only leave us $2,700 left per remaining players, which it's probably doable if we played one of those 1K guys, which I'm not really sure I feel great about. Maybe you could play N'Keal Harry at $200, but For right now, we're going to try to go a little bit more balanced, and we'll just plug in Nelson Aguilar at $3,000. And he didn't fail me in the last showdown, so he was definitely one of the better plays to have. Not saying that's going to equal him having a great game tonight, but just seems a little low, and he does fit nicely in my lineup here. So now we're left with just around $5,000 left per player, which definitely feels a lot better. Moving on to the tight ends here, we'll start with the Bills, which is just Dawson Knox and Tommy Sweeney here. Dawson Knox has been a touchdown scoring machine for the Bills so far this year, averaging over 3/4 of a touchdown per game. And he played 91% of the snaps last week versus New Orleans. Tommy Sweeney played over 20% of the snaps, and it's only $200. So if we happen to catch a ball or two, I actually think he's a viable punt option, especially if he just happen to fall into the end zone. So keep him on your GPP radars. Wouldn't go there in cash games or single entry, but if you're playing 150 max or 20 max, I wouldn't mind getting a little bit of Sweeney in there. And as far as the Patriots go, Hunter Henry and Johnny Smith both play over 50% of the snaps. Like, the Patriots use plenty of two tight end sets, and whenever the case is when they play similar snaps and they get similar targets, like, look at their numbers on the season. Johnny Smith is seeing 3.45 targets per game, 11% target share. Hunter Henry is getting 4 targets per game. He's just scoring more touchdowns, but Johnny Smith is half the price of Hunter Henry. He plays just slightly less snaps. They're going to project somewhat similar. I just would rather play Johnny Smith at that price point. Yeah, you might get unlucky with touchdown variance if Henry comes out, scores a touchdown or two, and Johnny Smith does not. But if you're going to give me similar volume, I'm going to take Johnny Smith on that. I'm not saying I'd fade Hunter Henry. I'm just saying I'd rather be more inclined to play Johnny Smith than I would Hunter Henry just to try to get that value. And I will say both teams have been incredible versus tight ends so far this year. It's not the end-all, be-all for me. I think talented tight ends can overcome that. And Dawson Knox, I think, is one of the better tight ends in football, especially so far this season, especially in this offense where they utilize him quite a bit. Josh Allen seems to like him and just keep scoring touchdowns. But the Patriots allowing the 4th fewest points per game to tight ends, and the Bills are allowing the fewest points per game to tight ends. Like I said, like, every matchup for every position here sucks besides like the running backs, but even then it's like I don't really want to play any of those running backs. So it's a bit of a tough slate as far as matchups go, but I think these guys will be fine. It's not like they're overly expensive. And I do like Dawson Knox quite a bit. He's just more of a cheaper pass catching option to pair it with Josh Allen. And looking at the defenses, I don't really like either defense here. This should be a sloppy game, but I don't really want to play the Patriots defense versus Josh Allen. I'm not saying these defenses aren't good. They obviously are. We've already talked about how good they are versus each position. I think you probably flex them a little bit, but I'm not going to captain these defenses. If they happen to get a defensive touchdown, like I always say, I'll gladly take the L there, but it usually does not happen. And both quarterbacks have been good this year. Josh Allen, Mac Jones, I don't really want to pick on either. They're fine flex plays. It should be a sloppy game otherwise in Buffalo, but not overly excited about playing any of these defenses. But it is a low over-under at 41, and team totals aren't very high. So, I could see them being fine flex plays, but they're going to have to score a touchdown to probably be optimal in the captain spot. As far as kickers go, again, windy conditions, poor weather could hurt long-distance field goals, but I'm not really sure we can project that as of right now. We'll have to see what it looks like by game time, but these guys are always fine cash plays in tournaments. I'm either usually like right to the field or slightly underweight and maybe like 1 to 2% max in the captain spot, but in cash games, I typically like playing the kicker on the highest implied team total team because they just tend to do very well. Like, I feel like the past several showdown sites, kickers on the highest scoring team typically do very, very well, and you can get away with that in cash games for sure. All right, so just to finish this lineup off, and like I always say, guys, don't copy and paste this. I get comments saying sometimes the lineup sucks. I didn't build this lineup for it to be used. I'm just trying to see what fits as we talk throughout the video. Sometimes it's a good lineup, I'm sure, but I'm just going through it as we talk about it and building it on the fly to see what fits and what does not. So we're left with $5,000 left. I'd like to get another pass catching option with Josh Allen. I'm not sure we can quite afford Cole Beasley. If we went Cole Beasley, that'd only be $1,800. That really limits our last option there. Maybe we could get just a dirt cheap option, but I'm not sure I want to go that route. So I think it's either going to be between Emmanuel Sanders or Dawson Knox. We just got done talking about Dawson Knox, so we'll just plug him in. Hopefully he scores a touchdown. That would leave us $4,200 left for the last spot, which I think would get us a kicker, and we would with Nick Folk here. I'd prefer Tyler Bass, but I'm not going to complain about Nick Folk too much. Maybe we just get a ton of field goals. The Patriots keep stalling inside the 30-yard line, whatever it may be. I will say the weather's not friendly to kickers, but whatever. I'm still going to roster some kickers on this slate. So if we plug them in, that'd be an easy $50,000. I don't think it's a bad-looking lineup. You have Josh on the captain spot, pair with Stephon Diggs and Dawson Knox, and Mac Jones in the flex, paired up with Nelson Aguilar, then we have the Patriots kicker. If you want to go the Dawson Knox route, you could take him out, maybe put in a guy like Emmanuel Sanders. He's $6,400. You have to find a cheaper option, which I believe we could go with Johnny Smith. We could play Brandon Bolden. We'll see what it is. Brandon Bolden is currently questionable if he happened to be out. Obviously, that would be a boost to the running backs for the Patriots, but as of right now, I'm assuming he's good to go. I don't mind Johnny there. He should get you a few targets, and at that price point, don't think it looks too bad. But plenty of ways you can go tonight. You don't have to captain Josh Allen. You can always get different. Use Stephon Diggs, Mac Jones, Aguilar, Sanders, whoever it may be. Use your own judgment, make some pretty awesome lineups tonight. That being said, I think that'll be it for the video. So I hope it was helpful, and if it was, make sure you would like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet already. If you want to take that one step further, an official member over on Patreon. Link is down below in the description for that. Optimizers, ownership projections, cheat sheets for the NFL and the NBA, then MLB and NASCAR once those seasons start back up again. So if you want to check it out, link can be found down below. And don't forget, this video was sponsored by Prize Picks. And as of right now, if you're new to sign over there, you can get a free money bonus up to $100 when you use code CPEN and tell them I sent you to prizepicks.com, or you can use the link down below. But I think that'll be it. I will stop rambling. I wish you guys the best of luck tonight. I'll see you in the next video.